Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal here with you every Monday and Thursday, wherever you get your audio podcasts as well. The NHL on ESPN, YouTube. Let's begin with Greg Wyshynski's favorite subject in hockey history, the New York Rangers.
Oh, love it, baby. No quit in NY. Bring it back home. It's been too long. 30 years without a cup. When you combine that with the 54 years without a cup, the Rangers have 2 Stanley Cups since 1940. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, Arda.
No, and you it's not like you love to mention that either. No, come on, not you. But listen, you've said it on this show. It's out there, the team of destiny. They just somehow find a way to win. The series is tied at 2, 3 straight overtime games. Rangers have won a couple. The Panthers stormed back, and now they've won a game in overtime as well. Here's where I would like to start, though.
Sure.
Here's a fun stat. You know me, I love my statistics. A shout out to the ESPN Stats and Information Group. This is one I found myself, though.
Oh.
The following players have less points in this series than Sergei Bobrovsky, who has 1 assist, Chris Kreider, and Mika Zibanejad. Why is that happening, Wish?
I mean, obviously because Sergei Bobrovsky is a scoring juggernaut. It's a really good question. And I think the real question, Arda, is can the Rangers win this series without getting goals from arguably their top 3 offensive players? I mean, Artemi Panarin has gone 7 games without a goal. He does have 5 assists in that span. Zibanejad, 9 games without a goal, has 4 assists in that span. And as you mentioned, Christopher Kreider, as my good friend Pierre McGuire used to call him, no points in the series. Meaning he hasn't scored since that amazing hat trick game to eliminate the Carolina Hurricanes. So the real story as we head back to New York for Game 5 is, a bit of what the Panthers are doing, which we'll get to in a second, but mostly like, can the Rangers actually pull this thing off with the kind of contributions they're getting from their star players? And is the tide about to turn where these guys who aren't usually kept off the score sheet start hitting it? And when that happens, do the Rangers then move into the driver's seat?
Right. And let's put this into perspective. We're tied at 2 with these players not contributing to the degree that they normally contribute, right?
Yeah, and in Zibanejad's case, being a negative, I mean, it's his turnover that directly leads to the situation in overtime where Blake Wheeler has to take the minor penalty. So, he's been a detriment at times as well for this team.
Meanwhile, the Panthers have been dominant for most of this series. Shot attempts, scoring chances, offensive zone time possession. But the series is still tied at 2. Mm-hmm. But with this overtime goal and the way that things shook down in game number 4, do you just think maybe the team of destiny has run out and the Panthers are taking over?
Those are 2 separate questions. Let me hit the first one first.
Okay.
I still believe the Rangers are a team of destiny. I still can't believe that they've won as many 1-goal games as they have, overtime games. They're getting bounces. They're having magic moments. There was one moment, though, in Game 4 when I paused for a second, and it was Blake Wheeler taking the minor penalty that led to the overtime power play goal that won the game for the Panthers. In every other situation in this postseason, when a button has been pressed and a big emotional return has happened, or they needed something magical to happen, like if in the team of destiny meme, Arda, Wheeler gets the assist on a Rangers power play goal to win the game. You know what I'm saying? And in this case, he comes back, he takes a minor penalty, he's sitting in the box as the Panthers scored to make the series 2-2. It was the first time I'm like, okay, well, that's not a highlight for the commemorative Blu-ray. Okay. And maybe I'm buying too much into the team of destiny narrative. That being said, still team of destiny. The Panthers part of it, though, is really interesting, man, because it's the last 2 games when they really found their groove at home. 71% of the shot attempts in the last 2 games, 74% of the scoring chances last 2 games, 71% of the expected goals. That's all at 5-on-5. As we talked about at the start of the series, the advantage the Panthers had was at even strength. The Rangers were able to mitigate that damage against the Carolina Hurricanes. The disparity has been significantly different in this series against the Florida Panthers. And yet, Arda, it's a 2-2 series going back to New York for Game 5.
Can I offer a conspiracy theory?
Oh, I love a conspiracy theory, as long as it doesn't get us fired.
I think this one will keep us employed. Okay. So Blake Wheeler takes the quote-unquote penalty.
Okay.
The debate ensues. Mm-hmm. Was that a penalty shot? that was not called a penalty shot because everyone, I'm
Mhm.
certain, I certainly was, waiting for the referee to point to center ice as
Mhm.
soon as that play happened.
Mhm.
Player breakaway, Blake Wheeler brings the man down, penalty shot. Now, I understand that a penalty shot converts at a higher rate than a power play.
Mhm.
But the way that Igor Shesterkin has been playing and the way that we constantly compare this team to the 94 Rangers, well, what else happened in that Stanley Cup final? An amazing penalty shot save by Mike Richter on Pavel
Pavel
Bure.
Bure,
Would it
yeah.
not have been the perfect addition to the narrative if it was a penalty shot and the save was made? And probably, if you're a Rangers fan, you would have preferred the penalty shot the way that Shesterkin was playing.
That's funny. That's funny. So your conspiracy is that the refs don't call the penalty shot because it would have bought into the team of destiny narrative. Here I'm thinking they're just cowards that don't want to affect the outcome of a game, so they just leave it to a power play versus penalty kill situation versus being bold and calling the correct call, which would be a penalty shot for Alexander Barkov. But to your point, Barkov already got stopped by Shesterkin in that game on a partial break. And I agree with you. I actually think the Panthers had a better chance of scoring the power play than the penalty shot, which was I obviously came to fruition with the way the game ended. Paul Maurice was asked that very question, by the way, Arda, about whether you take the penalty shot or the power play, which would he prefer? And then, as you mentioned, the numbers break it down this way. This season, including the playoffs, players have been successful 34% of their penalty shot attempts. The Panthers in the playoffs converting at a 25% clip on the power play. The NHL average in the postseason has been 22% on the power play. I don't know, man. I feel like I would take the power play, to be honest with you, in that situation. What about you?
Honestly, if I were the Rangers coach, if I were Peter Laviolette, if I had the choice, if I was
But
presented
you're
with the
Paul
power
Maurice
to
in this case
choose,
because his guy was
oh,
fouled.
sorry. If I was Paul
Yeah.
Maurice, I would take the power play, yes. But if the Rangers had the choice, in my conspiracy theory scenario,
Yeah.
okay, let's just say that the Rangers had the choice, they would choose the penalty shot simply because they would believe in Igor Shesterkin making that one
Yeah.
save over killing off a
And
penalty
and
because he's been
and
so good.
that's the other part of it too, man, is that like you think of the emotional swing of Shesty stopping a penalty shot to preserve overtime versus like just a power play failing. I mean, that thing could swing in the Rangers' favor with the
Yeah,
emotion that they
yeah.
get out of that stop. So
We
I don't
we
know.
were
It was an
robbed of one
interesting
more
little debate.
narrative
I
point.
am a
Yeah.
fan of teams being able to choose, like we talked about with the Trouba double minor last episode,
Yes.
the option of either having the power play or the penalty shot in this situation. So I'm glad Maurice addressed it.
So that series is tied at 2. Another series tied at 2. The Oilers and the Stars. Boy, the Oilers! What a game for them. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde comes to mind. We'll dive into that. The first question I would like to ask you, though, as that series is also tied at 2, and this is how I'm going to word it. There's been a lot of attention on a certain defenseman on the Edmonton Oilers. Has Darnell nursed himself back to prominence?
um, prominence might be a stretch, but competence I think is more is more in his reach. Look, man, Kevin Bieksa had a great line on Sportsnet the other night where he called the Edmonton media the Edmonton meat because they're raw, dead, and dumb. Now that's mean, but when it comes to the Edmonton media, they do tend to pile on sometimes. And I found it to be very amusing that the Edmonton media created this narrative of Darnell Nurse being a hapless, incompetent guy that should be on the verge of being scratched because he leads the NHL in negative plus minus, and he's been on the ice for more goals than anybody else at 5-on-5 against Dallas. Like the numbers aren't good, but it's not like this guy's a disaster out there, but that's the way he was being treated. So then, of course, he gives this press conference before the press availability before game 4, where he's giving these curt little, 3-word answers. And then what happens? First 2 goals he's on the ice for Dallas. And you're thinking this is going to be a disaster. But as their coach, Chris Knobloch, said, Arda, you got to give the man all the credit in the world for not falling apart after having such rotten luck to start the game. He played well. He played a solid 19 minutes. He had 12 hits in the game. But most importantly for me, he didn't try to overcompensate for the pressure that had been applied on him by the Edmonton media. He knows Connor McDavid is getting questions about his ineptitude, okay? But he didn't go and try to force things or do anything stupid to try to overcompensate for that criticism. He played within himself and he played a real good game. And I give him, that was one of the more professional performances by a player in these playoffs that I've seen.
Nice. Yeah, credit where credit is due. Absolutely. So let's credit the Edmonton Oilers for what they are and try to understand exactly what this team is, Wish. Are they the team that we saw in the first period of game 4, or are they the team that we saw in periods 2 and 3? Because it's kind of confusing at the moment.
They're the most maddening playoff team I have ever seen, because there are moments when it looks like they can raise the cup, and there are moments where it looks like they will drop the thing and shatter it if they tried to raise the cup. The first 6 minutes of game 4 were inept, and they looked like they were going to get absolutely rolled by Dallas. And then the rest of the game, they're the ones doing the rolling. We talked, after game 3, the talk was, where was that Oilers team we saw in the first period the rest of the game? Well, I'll tell you where they went. They got too fat and happy. They fell in love with their game. They sat around and watched the puck on defensive plays instead of paying attention to their details. Last night, after that, getting into that hole, they had to pay attention to details. They could not give up a third goal to Dallas. And in Stuart Skinner's case, he didn't. They are a team that looks as dominant as any team that we have in the playoffs at times. And at other times, they look like fold up the tents and cry for Connor McDavid again, because it's not going to happen. And I cannot figure out who this team is game to game, but I do know that when they play well enough to win the Stanley Cup.
Okay, so even though we can't figure out this team, let's figure out the rest of the series, starting with game 5. How do you think that goes?
I think the Oilers are in a bit of a run right now. I think they can feel confident about their game, but the biggest thing for me, Arda, is Dallas and their health right now. Chris Tanev leaving game 4 with the block shot on the foot. By the time you hear this podcast, maybe we know what his status is for game 5. He'll never, the idea of Chris Tanev being healthy enough to play, throw that out the window. The man's not healthy. He's being held together by scotch tape and prayers at this point. Okay. But is he going to play is the question, because if he doesn't play, that's 19 minutes of really solid hockey you're not getting from Chris Tanev in a part of the Dallas Stars lineup that we've already identified as being their softest, weakest part, the blue line. They're not healthy back there. They're not deep enough back there. If they lose Tanev, that is a huge series turning injury. But the thing I'm wondering about most, Arda, and maybe you could address this, is, do the Stars need to throw their lines in a blender? Do they need to make their big changes after the Oilers and Chris Knoblauch made their significant lineup changes in game 4 with great results? What do the Dallas Stars have to do?
Yeah, I think that they do experiment and tinker. Chris Knoblauch did some, and it worked out very, very well. I think that they need to experiment a little bit and see how it goes, because I mean this is where coaches earn their name, right? Mark Messier says it all the time. You earn your money in the regular season, you earn your name in the postseason, and that's how the coaches do it. There's some genius way to put together different players that are on different lines, blender up the top 6, see how it works for the Dallas Stars. And listen, they have no shortage of depth up front to be able to try that. Jason Robertson woke up in a recent game, right? He woke 2 games ago. Jason Robertson woke up. Maybe he needs a change of scenery to continue to stay awake.
Yeah, somebody must have put NyQuil in his water bottle, because he went right back to sleep in game 4. He was a complete non-factor after tallying a hat trick in game 3. I'll take the Oilers in game 5. I'll be there for that game. I hope it's a fun one in Dallas, and I'll take the Rangers in game 5 in their series. I think the one thing we haven't talked about with the Panthers is how they have this mental thing where they play better when they're counted out, when their backs are against the wall, when they're the underdog, when they're expected to win. They never seem to play well. When they're down 2-1 in a series, or everybody's on the Rangers tip as far as being the team that's going to win, the team of destiny. That's when they seem to thrive. I tend to believe the Rangers right now are the one that has to climb out of the abyss. And so that being said, I think the Panthers probably drop game 5 and then come back and win game 6, and then we go to game 7.
To your team of destiny point, then that would mean the Panthers would have to win game 5, right? And then that means they're not playing with their backs against the wall, which opens up the Rangers to be able to claw back. And wait a minute, didn't that happen in another year where they won the cup against another certain team? I was thinking about this. What defenseman, though, on the Rangers has a quotable name like Matteau, Matteau, Matteau. Like, I think we're struggling. Like, Fox doesn't sound as
Well,
cool.
Matteau, I believe, was a forward, but
Oh,
if you're
sorry, my bad.
saying which name sounds the best in a Howie Rose-esque call
Yeah,
as
right.
they score in overtime in Game 7 and crush the
Yes,
spirit of young Panthers fans, like a young Greg Wyshynski's spirit was crushed back in 1994. I
that's what I'm
believe
saying.
the name you're looking for, Arda, is Rempe is the name that you're looking for in that classic call. The new Matteau, Matt Rempe.
Rampire. Yeah, okay. I
We
can
got one
get
more
behind
hill
that.
to climb, baby, and it's Mount Dallas or Edmonton, one of the two.
Mount Dallas, and it's Lake Louise. Woo! And something like that. So you're gonna be in Dallas for game number 5.
That's correct. Yeah.
I was in Boston last night for the crowning of the PWHL's Walter Cup.
All right.
Game 5, decisive game 5 between Boston and Minnesota. Also in attendance was my colleague for the Women's College Hockey National Championship ESPN desk and former Northeastern captain Paige Capistran. And we talk all about the inaugural season of the PWHL with her now. Very happy to have joining us here on the Drop former Northeastern captain. She was in attendance at the Tsongas Center, Game 5 decisive between Boston and Minnesota, watching PWHL Minnesota win the Walter Cup, the first ever PWHL championship. Paige Capistran also joined me on the Women's National Championship desk. Great to be reunited, Paige. How you doing?
I'm good. It's a sad day in Boston. It's raining here, but still a good day for women's hockey. Thank you for having me.
Yes, very great day for women's hockey. History made last night. Wasn't close. Minnesota brought everything to Boston, and Boston really had no answer. What would you say was like? It really looked like Minnesota was the faster team. They were better in pretty much every zone. Like, how were they able to manhandle the game like that?
Well, like you said, they were just better in every zone. So it started in the D zone. They really did not give Boston an inch. If you look at the third period, Boston only had 3 shots on goal. And if you're down, that's not, you can't do anything with that. But then working their way up, they really hemmed in Boston on their own end. Erin Frankel played unbelievable. She made 41 saves for Boston. And yeah, Minnesota, they came out hungry, and I'm sure that crazy game 4 really put a little fire under their belly.
I was gonna say, I mean, I know it's dark skies and sadness in Boston, but it is purple rainbows in Minnesota. I cannot believe they pulled themselves up off the canvas after the incredible heartbreaking way that they lost game 4. People openly weeping in the stands in Minnesota because of the sway of emotions. What did you make of that goalie interference situation and the way that Minnesota was able to kind of compose themselves for an elimination game?
Well, first of all, I feel like I still can't believe what happened. Like, have we ever seen that? No. And right away for me watching, I thought they were gonna call it back. Obviously it's you wonder in that moment because the gloves were thrown. You wonder if the refs will make the right call, and they did. And I was talking to Erin Frankel, and she said that based off the play, she had no idea that they were going to do it. She didn't call it back. She didn't know until the Jumbotron at the arena played the replay. She's like, oh, maybe we have a chance. And she said that was the craziest game she has ever played, which is not surprising. But I mean, for Minnesota to think that you won and then to then fly here and then win, I mean, their emotions are probably just, they probably still can't believe what happened based off of game 4.
So the cup is raised, Minnesota inaugural champion. We saw a lot of records set this year, attendance records, viewership records for women's hockey. How do you view the first season of the PWHL?
Remarkable. I think from just when you think about what they did in 6 months, Kendall Coyne yesterday said that they signed the first document July 1st and puck drop was January 1st. So to think of what they did with this league in 6 months really is just, no one would have expected it. And it's just so remarkable. And the professional standard that this league had this season, it is what women's hockey needed. And I can't wait to see how it keeps getting better. And I mean, next year there's going to be names, so it won't be PWHL Minnesota, PWHL Boston. So to have names and logos, that's going to add a lot. But it's just so wonderful to see the fact that these players can really live out a dream that a lot of them weren't even dreaming because it didn't exist, is wonderful. And Taylor Heisey yesterday, so the MVP of playoffs, said that this is the only pro she knows. And like, that really hit home. That's like crazy and wonderful, because she is one of the best forwards players in the world. And this is all she knows post college. Like, that is wonderful for the women's game.
Great paradigm, right? Can I just say, I love the Taylor Heisey continuum. Born and raised in Minnesota, played for the University of Minnesota, wins a Kazmaier in Minnesota, then gets drafted first overall by Minnesota, now wins a championship and an MVP with the Minnesota pro team. Like, what a cool through line for a career, right?
And she said in her post-game interview, like, Minnesota, the state of hockey, you know, she is proud. And just like the hockey world, you know, that everyone from Minnesota, they are so proud to be from Minnesota. Like all my friends from that, like the tournaments I played in or like playing at Northeastern, Minnesota, they really are the state of hockey. So it's not shocking that the first Walter Cup is going to the state of hockey.
Couple thoughts real quick. First of all, you're right. Names next year. Still time to bring back the Riveters. Just saying, you own the name. You can bring it back in the logo. I'm just saying. The first pro hockey game I ever took my daughter to was a Riveters game. So I have a very emotional connection with that name and logo. Second of all, the craziest thing for me as someone who's covered the other incarnations of women's pro hockey here in the U.S. is the incredible attention this league got throughout the season. Insofar as like, you know, they gave a shout out and showed highlights of Game 5 on Turner during the Oilers game the other night. You know, the Game 4 goalie interference overtime thing got discussed on a lot of mainstream shows. Like this league immediately has gotten more, I think, attention and recognition from the mainstream hockey world than the other incarnations has. But the thing I wanted to ask you, and the last thing I want to ask you is about Kendall. You mentioned Kendall Coyne before. I've covered her in the Olympics. She obviously was a huge leader behind the scenes on the PWHPA, an icon in women's hockey. I just wanted to get your thoughts. She scores the empty netter to seal the deal. Your thoughts on Kendall Coyne's impact on women's hockey, especially here in the U.S.
I mean, what she has done is, Kelly Panic said after the game, everything last night would not have happened without Kendall Coyne. And talking to a bunch of the current players, like a lot of them have been saying that it's Hillary Knight and Kendall Coyne Schofield who really led the charge in making this happen. So I think it's really cool that both captains, they were the ones in the championship and I feel like it's really deserving. And when you think about Kendall putting the puck in the empty net and being the first to hold the trophy, it's like stars aligning. Like it was just meant to be. Like it's just what she's done for women's hockey and for the future, and the little girls who now can really dream big. And it's just, I have like no words. It's just remarkable.
Well said. And we look forward to what comes with season 2 of the PWHL. Paige, thanks for joining us on the drop. It was a lot of fun on the women's college hockey desk as well. We'll throw out a woohoo for that.
Woohoo. Thanks, Arda.
Thanks again to Paige for joining us here on The Drop. Here's a segment we like to call Buy and Sell. I'm going to throw some superlatives, some thoughts, some ideas at you in the world of hockey, and you tell me if you're buying or selling them. Wish, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Number one, buy or sell. Steven Stamkos leaves the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I'm selling on that one. His stuff is in Tampa. We'd all know where his stuff is. And I also think that, the question is whether or not the money that they think they've carved out to sign him is the amount of money he wants to make on his next contract. And I think three things. His stuff is there. He clearly has talked about wanting to spend his career with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then, they can still win. Like, the other part of this people don't talk about is, you could throw a ton of money at Steven Stamkos. He can go and be the marquee player for the Utah Yeti or whatever. But the Utah Yeti or whatever are not as close to winning a Stanley Cup as the Tampa Bay Lightning are. And I still believe in this core, and I still believe that there's a chance they can win a cup. And I think he knows that too.
Yeah, they're still a couple pieces away. They always will be if they have the players that they have on our roster. And also if Andrei Vasilevsky is prime Andrei Vasilevsky, which he always has the ability to be. Buy or sell, we have seen our very last Boston goalie hug, and Ullmark is leaving Beantown.
I think so. I think that the Boston Bruins have had the luxury of this goaltending tandem. I think the Boston Bruins now know that they have other needs within that roster that they could address by trading Linus Ullmark for something and opening up cap space in their goaltending battery. It's going to be a matter of him accepting the deal. But I do think that when you get away from the trade deadline, there are more opportunities to, have communication with other teams, try to see what fits, and open up the market a little bit more. And again, it is going to be a goalie market this summer. I mean, you have teams like New Jersey outwardly saying that they're going to trade for a goalie. If Ullmark's available, him, Markstrom, others, it's going to be interesting to see where the musical chairs end. But I do think that they end with Linus Ullmark outside of Boston.
Goalie carousel, also coaching carousel, not so much in Seattle anymore, as Dan Bylsma is the new head coach of the Seattle Kraken. Buy or sell, Wish, Dan Bylsma will be the guy that brings the Kraken back to the postseason.
I'm like, this season, I'm selling. I'm buying maybe a year from now. I still think that the Kraken have some roster questions to answer. And I give Dan Bylsma all the credit in the world for working his way back from the dismissal in Buffalo. I mean, we're talking about, him working as an associate coach in Detroit, him going to the American Hockey League, being a head coach there. He's worked his way back, and I give him full credit for sticking with it. I just don't know inherently what kind of NHL coach he's going to be. And I hope that I hope it works out for him. But I don't know if the Kraken are a playoff team next year.
I'm with you. I give it 2 or 3 years. They're back in the postseason. They got to make some trades, some pieces, see some development, but they're on track. Maybe not next season. One of the biggest, I can't believe that we haven't spent a good 45 minutes dissecting this photo. One of the biggest things to come out of this offseason so far for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Craig Berube and Mitch Marner sharing a coffee in the corner of a restaurant. But now we got to ask the question, Wish, buy or sell? Mitch Marner leaving the T-Dot, the 6, no longer a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Look, if you break bread, if you share coffee, bonds are created, Arda. I'm selling, but I'm buying, by the way, that I'm selling that he'll be traded. And the reason I'm selling that he'll be traded is not because of any sort of Java summit with Craig Berube, but because I'm not quite sure what the market is. Like, he's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. And you're going to have teams that really have to ante up to acquire this guy at his current contract price point, knowing that you're going to have to sign him to an even longer term deal. And again, where is his stock right now? If you're a team acquiring Mitch Marner, you're acquiring a guy that has the reputation of not being able to perform in the playoffs. Can you sell that to your fan base based on cost of acquisition? So I do wonder what the market is. Again, last time I checked in, they didn't get pitched on by any teams about trying to trade for Marner. That was a couple weeks ago. Maybe things have changed. So I'm a little bit more skeptical that he's actually going to be traded. I know they want to, but whether he actually gets traded is another story.
I just want to know what font Marner's name will be on the back of the Utah Yeti jersey, which leads me, that's naturally my segue to the next question. Buy or sell the Utah hockey team, whatever they will be named. And by the way, Ryan Smith was on Pat McAfee I think it was yesterday, where he said that the search is down to 4 nicknames, and I believe Yeti and Mammoth are
Correct.
2 of the ones still in the running.
Yeah.
So, more generally, I'm joking about Marner, of course. Will the buy or sell wish the Utah team will make some sort of giant splash, dare say a blockbuster trade in the offseason to kick things off?
Yeah, I think they will. I'll buy on that one. I don't know if it's going to be a free agent signing or if it's going to be a blockbuster trade, but I do think they need to make a splash. And I do think that one of the things that certainly was appealing about the acquiring the Coyotes assets versus straight up expansion team for Ryan Smith was the idea that he's got that treasure trove of draft picks that he can use to try to acquire a star player to put on the marquee outside. So I do think that either free agency or blockbuster trade, we're going to see Utah make a significant move. But your lead into the question made me think, Arda. We know that if it's Yeti, it's just going to be Yeti. It's not going to be Yetis, even though canonically Yetis is correct. If it's Mammoth, will they shorten it to Mams? Will that, like Metropolitans Mets, Knickerbockers Knicks, will it be the Mams? I never really thought of it that way.
It won't be the Moths, I'll tell you that. That'll sound silly.
That's a little cross-species nickname. Yeah, I guess it'd
like
have to be the Mams, right? Oh,
the Yets? Wait, what about the Yetis?
No,
Yets,
you don't
like the
shorten
Mets?
Yeti. Yeti's Yeti. But Mams, it's like, I'm going to the Mams game tonight. Hey, how are the Mams doing? I don't know.
No, they'll be the M's. Maybe the M's. I don't think the
dude,
Mams.
the M's, like the Mariners? Okay.
Yeah, maybe the M's. I like the M's.
See it.
By the way, to your point about the, I'm with you on the buy on that, by the way, because I think Ryan Smith is just the owner to do that too, and to want to do that and to invest in it the way that he's been talking. So I like that.
If it's Utah Mammoth and the initials are UM, do you make them the ums instead of the Mams?
Oh my gosh, the ums. We just scored. This is going down. No, we got to get out of it. We got to bail on this. We are going down a really, really awful path right now. Yes, they would be the ums.
Give me one more buy or sell before we head out.
Yeah, I love this one. I'm buying 1,000% just simply because I want to see it. So Alex Ovechkin is 41 goals away from tying Wayne Gretzky. Buy or sell, he gets to 42 next season and breaks the record.
I'll sell on that, but I do think he gets closer than a lot of people think. I could see him getting all the way up to like 35 to 40, and then we all get super excited, and the watch is on, and then we just run out of runway, and then we begin the following season all on Ovechkin watch. Ovechkin watch takes over the first month and a half of the next season after that. So I'll sell on that. But do you think he makes it? Do you think he catches Gretzky this year?
I feel like he'll be motivated. I feel like he's going to have a lot of games where he just scores like 2-3 goals. He's going to, about the halfway mark, he's going to be at like 24 goals. And we're going to be thinking, yeah, you know what? This is entirely possible. And we're going to be talking about it for half a season.
I've talked about it for years, man. It is going to be our Ripken record. It's going to be our home run race. It's going to be that moment where the sports world writ large focuses on the National Hockey League when the Gretzky record is in sight, and I cannot wait for it to happen.
And it'll be continuous. Like it's going to be during the tail end of the chase, and then when it's tied, and then when it's broken. So it's going to be a continuous love letter to hockey, essentially, and to Alex Ovechkin's career and goal scoring prowess. Gretzky is going to be in the building. Like you're just gonna, it's going to be like Gordie Howe going to games. Watching Gretzky break his record, right? Like it's going to be very, very similar. And I can't wait for it. Thank you for watching and listening to The Drop. Remember, every Monday, Thursday, wherever you get your audio podcasts, as well, the NHL and ESPN YouTube. Enjoy the pucks this weekend, and we will see you on Monday.